Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Cyber Briefing. I'm your host, Rich Benfield, standing in for Stephen Ridgway. Today is Friday. Thank goodness it's the 17th of October and it's 8:30 in the morning. Today, I am joined by Mr. Ross Eastman, who should be in here. Let's pop him in. There
Hi.
he is. Hello, good
Hello.
morning, sir.
Is my audio working? I'm having a bit of a fight with this morning.
Yeah, you're all good. We can hear you loud and clear. So,
From the
being a Friday, the format's slightly different from the usual stuff during the week, in that I'll give you a rundown of a few top headlines, and then we hand over to Ross to talk about what's going on in the world around attacks and data from our honeypots. So, okay, top of the news then. We've got an EBF-based rootkit hiding malicious activity on Linux. Critical Cisco IOS and ISXE flaws allow remote code execution. And F5 issues security patches for multiple products after their recent breach. So all of these articles today, curiously, come from GB Hackers. So thanks to them for really coming up with the goods. So let's have a chat about an eBPF-based rootkit hiding malicious activity on Linux. So security researchers from Synactive CSERT have uncovered a sophisticated Linux rootkit dubbed LinkPro that leverages eBPF, that's extended Barclay packet filters, to establish the persistent backdoor access while maintaining virtually invisible. This hasn't gone well to start with. I'm not awake enough for this.
I'm the same. I'm struggling to get off choke this morning, Rich. I know what it's like.
Yeah. So anyway, it established persistent backdoor access while remaining virtually invisible to traditional monitoring tools. The infection chain originated from a vulnerable Jenkins server exposed to the internet, exploited through CVE 2024-23897.
It's always Jenkins.
2024 as well. So threat actors leveraged this initial access point to deploy a malicious Docker image named KVLNT/VV across multiple Amazon EKS clusters. For those of you that aren't aware, that stands for Elastic Kubernetes Service. The containerized payload consisted of a Kali Linux base image containing three critical components: a bash startup script, a VPN server program called VNT for proxy capabilities, and a Rust-based downloader malware dubbed vget. The malware addressed a significant evolution in Linux targeting threats, combining advanced stealth capabilities with flexible operational modes to compromise Linux systems across cloud infrastructure. The first piece of malicious code is a dropper embedding another vShell backdoor executed in memory, this time communicating via DNS tunneling. The vget downloader retrieved an encrypted payload from an Amazon S3 bucket, delivering vShell 4.9.3 backdoor directly into memory to avoid leaving traces on disk. The previously documented backdoor, notably used by threat actor UNC5174, communicated with its command and control server at this IP address. Get your notepads ready. Here we go. 56.155.98.37, and it does it via WebSocket. So pop that into your firewall rules and everything else. That was, just to repeat that, 56.155.98.37. The sophisticated attack eventually led to the deployment of LinkPro, the crown jewel of the operation. So LinkPro distinguishes itself through its dual layer concealment strategy, utilizing two distinct eBPF modules. LinkPro embeds 4 ELF modules, a shared library, a kernel module, and 2 eBPF modules. The first module, referred to as the hide module, implements eBPF programs of tracepoint and cretprobe types to intercept critical system calls. By hooking into getDents and getDents64 system calls, LinkPro filters directory listings to remove any references to files containing keywords like .temp data or .system. The rootkit also hides specific process directories under /proc, whose process IDs are stored in its eBPF map, capable of concealing up to 10 PIDs simultaneously. The hide module employs an additional sophisticated technique to conceal its own eBPF programs from detection tools like BPFtool. Okay, so that's a pain.
Yeah, it's pretty savage.
It is pretty savage because you can't see it. It's sitting underneath all of your network stuff. You
It's
know,
interesting it's a Docker container that gets deployed.
it is.
That's very interesting, and just in terms of configuration of containerized environments and how careful you have to be not to just pass through functions to the container that they don't need. Things like network stack, you have to explicitly pass through, for example, which can keep you out of trouble. But yeah, I mean, if you've already got somebody deploying a container in your environment that you didn't solicit, you're in trouble anyway. So,
Well, this is it. And one of the things with Docker is that because a lot of open source software runs in Docker natively and comes with all the config, and you just run an install command and it sets everything up for you, a lot of people would be forgiven for making the assumption that they were safe.
Yeah.
And not customize the config for fear of breaking it when they should be checking the networking side of the config specifically to make sure it fits in with their security policies and their environment.
It's one of the downsides about Docker generally is that there's an assumed level of separation, and Docker kind of obfuscates that a little bit. At least back in the bad old days when you were running OCI type containers in Linux and doing it all manually, you could really see how it was hooked into the system. And I think people kind of look at it and be like, oh, it's a virtual machine. No, very much not a virtual machine, very much just a process, just a one-thread process on your host machine, which is it's a bit different.
Yeah, exactly.
And there is, don't get me wrong, there is certain amounts of, sort of jailing there out of the box, but it's not as straightforward as saying, oh, it's a completely isolated system because it's in a container. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap.
No, that's it, exactly. So this actually does obviously call back to a C2 server and is very, very hard to detect using standard monitoring tools. So this article on GB Hackers, and the links will be in all the socials underneath this stream, you know, as per usual. There's quite a lot of technical details in here about how it works, what it does. So you will be able to work out your own indicators of compromise from this article. So yeah, it's certainly, if you're running Docker environments, you should definitely read this one. It's quite important. Let's move on to the critical Cisco IOS and IOS-XE flaws. Yet again from Cisco, another remote code execution. These seem to be popping up quite frequently. I mean, I get it. Cisco, a big company, a lot of products, therefore a lot of vulnerabilities. But blimey, every time I do the daily cyber briefing, I'm hearing about more and more Cisco flaws. You know, it's a bit of a concern.
I wonder if it's to do with as well the amount of time that people have Cisco gear running for. Like, it's not uncommon to find a comms cabinet with a 10-year-old Cisco switch in it.
Yeah, very true. And of course, this kind of goes with that whole argument that Mac users made for the last 30 years, saying, "Oh, on a Mac we don't get viruses," in comparison to Windows. Well, loads of people run Cisco, you know, and there was a time when they were the de facto brand for switching and firewalling.
Yeah.
So of course there's going to be more malicious scripts being run against their kit, you know, and things like that.
Well, it's a big enterprise target as well, right? Cisco's a really expensive product, so well, it can be. So there's a lot of very high value targets that are running Cisco gear, so it's going to naturally become a focus, isn't it?
Absolutely. So let's jump in. So we've got a CVE. It's CVE 2025-20352. It's a serious security vulnerability affecting IOS and IOS-XE software that could allow attackers to execute remote code or crash affected devices. So it's part of the SNMP subsystem. It has a CVSS score of 7.7, which marks it as a high severity threat. So basically, it's a Stack Overflow condition in the SNMP subsystem that processes network management traffic. What makes this flaw particularly concerning is its dual threat nature. Attackers with low-level privileges can exploit it to trigger a denial of service condition, forcing affected devices to reload and disrupt network operations. Okay, more alarmingly, attackers with high-level admin access can leverage the same flaw to execute arbitrary code with root privileges, potentially gaining complete control over the compromised system. To exploit this vulnerability, an attacker must send a specially crafted SNMP packet to the target device over IPv4 or over IPv6 networks. The attack requires either SNMP v2c or earlier, read-only community strings, or a valid SNMP v3 user credentials. So the vulnerability affects all versions of SNMP, making it a widespread concern for organizations using Cisco networking equipment. All Cisco devices running vulnerable releases of iOS software or iOS XE software with SNMP enabled are susceptible to this attack. So you can determine if your devices are vulnerable by checking the SNMP configuration using specific CLI commands. Devices with version 1, v2c or v3 enabled should be considered at risk unless they have explicitly excluded the affected object identifier. Okay, so Cisco have released software updates that fully address this vulnerability, and you are strongly urged to upgrade immediately.
Assuming you're in contract.
Yes, that is true. So the vulnerability was first published on September the 24th as part of Cisco's semi-annual security advisory bundled publication. But again, as Ross says, assuming that you have a support contract.
I've come across a lot of old Cisco gear that's not in contract and it just sits there.
Oh, absolutely.
Continues to perform its function and nobody thinks about it. There must be an awful lot of those.
Yeah. It does say here that organizations can use Cisco's software checker tool to identify affected releases and determine appropriate fixed software versions for their specific deployments. But the long and short of it is, make sure you've got a support contract and then patch the damn things. And my final article for today, again brought to you by GB Hackers, who really have delivered the goods this morning, is about F5. Now, for those of you in the industry, you'll know all about what's been going on with F5 in recent days. And they have now issued security patches for multiple products after their recent breach. So this spans across almost their entire product portfolio as it goes. So they issued their quarterly security notification on October the 15th, so 2 days ago, documenting numerous high-severity vulnerabilities that could potentially expose enterprise networks to significant security risks. The security advisory identifies over 30 vulnerabilities spanning F5's entire product ecosystem, with the majority classed as high-severity threats. These vulnerabilities affect core products, including Big IP systems, F5 OS platforms, and the newer Big IP Next series. I have got a list of CVEs here. I'm not going to read them out. Go to the article, the link's in the socials. Suffice to say, we've got all sorts of vulnerabilities here, with CVSS scores ranging from 7.5 to 8.8 from what I can see on this table. So the timing of this comprehensive patch release suggests that F5 conducted an extensive internal security audit following recent security concerns. Well, that was tactfully put by GB Hackers. Security concerns?
Yeah.
It's a full-on security meltdown.
Well, I'm wondering as well, because they've been really heavy in mergers and acquisitions over the past 18 months. So I wonder if there's a lot of very deep housekeeping going on that's sort of in line with the M&A stuff. That's highlighted a bunch of things.
Quite possibly. Sounds like a bunch of developers have been working around the clock. Yeah. So industry experts note that such large-scale vulnerability disclosures typically indicate proactive security assessments rather than reactive responses to active exploitation. I would agree with that on the basis that it's very hard to get that much code out the door when you've been popped that quickly. So I would say they probably knew about this stuff and have been working on it, but obviously the timing of their recent breach means they've probably hurried this along right at the final stages.
Yeah, figures.
Yeah. So the sort of modules this affects are their Application Security Manager, Advanced Web Application Firewall, SSL Orchestrator, and Access Policy Manager. And those components serve critical roles in protecting enterprise applications and managing secure access. And the F5 OS platforms, which provide the underlying operating system for next-gen F5 hardware, I hate that phrase, next-gen, anyway, also face significant vulnerabilities.
Yeah,
So,
I mean that's interesting because ADSP is kind of new. That's a 2025 release, that system, and I think it's the result of a acquisition,
right.
or possibly several acquisitions. But yeah, I wonder if it's something that they've taken on board and it's actually been a bit more riddled than they thought it was before they purchased them. That is interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the long and short of it is patch everything. Patch everything you've got from F5 because the patches have been released and it'd be silly not to.
Yeah.
So next up, Ross, over to you to talk about what we're seeing on our Honeypot network.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it a bit briefer than I managed last week. Me and Stephen got chatting for ages, and because it's all very interesting, and then all of a sudden we found ourselves running over. So I'll try and keep it brief. Okay, so I'm going to keep the sections largely the same. So the first thing I'll cover off very quickly is geolocations. That comes with the usual disclaimer that geolocation data is notoriously unreliable, especially when you consider that most people aren't going to exit from a node that's, in their hometown. But we have seen a distinct shift over the past 7 days in what we're getting reported. So the US is down from 74% to 68%, and I think the rest of them, apart from India, are pretty much all new to our top 5. Brazil at 6%, China at 6%, India at 5%, Jordan at 4%, and then an honourable mention to Russia in 6th place, and they didn't even make the top 10 last time, which surprised both me and Stephen. But they are at least showing up in our top 10 this time, so Russia's getting in there.
It's very weird with Russia. I mean, obviously, they've been at war with Ukraine for several years now, and I thought back when that war started that it would be full on the ground, but also online. I thought we'd see a lot of cyber attacks between the two countries, and it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. It was
Certainly
really odd.
News over here, no. No, it is strange, but then I guess probably their tech front is actually more in line with automated artillery.
Yeah.
And drones and that sort of thing, rather than worrying about public collateral. But yeah, it surprised me as well, to be honest. And I thought that there would be more repercussions for supporters of Ukraine in the cyberspace, where they weren't actively fighting a war on the ground against Russia, but were being caught in the crossfire by being actively supporting Ukraine. So yeah, it surprised me that it hasn't come up more. And again, surprised me that they are 6th down the list, to be totally honest. But then, who knows? The majority of stuff coming out of the US might be Russian. You just
it could well be.
So yeah, that's just a little insight into what we've got reported for geolocations. The sniff ports have shifted and changed around a bit. They're a bit more normal than what I reported on last time. There was lots of VoIP related activity and stuff last time. This time, you got VNC at the top of the list, followed by port 80, port 22, 443, and 6379's in the list again. So VNC at 5900, obviously HTTP on 80, SSH on 22, 443 HTTPS, and then Redis again sat on 6379. So the shape of that list has changed a bit, but become much more normal.
Yeah, I mean, there were some vulnerabilities in Redis recently, weren't there?
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that we're seeing that on the list. I'm surprised that actually, not surprised. That's not the right word. But VNC, right? I'm very nostalgic about VNC because back when I was an IT support engineer, over 20 something years ago, you didn't have much in the way of remote access tools, and everyone used real VNC.
Yeah.
And so it carries some nostalgia for me, and I didn't realize it was still a thing,
Yeah, apparently there's plenty of people using it. I think it gets used quite a lot in shared hosting.
Oh, okay.
There seems to be quite a lot of shared hosting type tutorials that are like, and then you just connect to this VNC session and you're on your virtual machine, and it's like, oh, okay. So I think it's being run as a service quite a lot.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah,
I never knew.
I mean, I guess there's still not that many desktop level remote options for Linux that are native. Obviously, it can talk. there are Linux clients to talk most protocols, but VNC still seems to be the kind of most popular in that space.
Oh, that's adorable. Love it.
Yeah. But as you say, Redis, not at all a surprise. As we covered in the last one, most of the internet is going to be using Redis at some point as a key cache. It gets used everywhere. And also because of the changes in licensing this year, tail end of last year, there's been a lot of forking. So if they were pre-existing issues, then they proliferated into forks probably. So yeah, that's the sniff ports. IP reputation. We have got a new contender in IP reputation group this week. We had known attackers very high last week as well, so 94% again. They're known to the teapot system. They and the other home bots. They're just things that have been picked up on IPDB, presumably. But the new category, Tor exit nodes at 4%. So. Ooh. Last week, Tor didn't even appear on the list, and this week it's gone up to 4%, which is actually quite high when you consider how much traffic we see across the honeypots. Which is considerable. So yeah, it's interesting that that's moved up the list. More people, more groups using Tor. Any particular reason? None that springs to mind. Nothing I've seen in the news that would sort of lead me towards Tor being the new flavor of this week.
No.
But there you are, interesting. Obviously, we all know about Tor and how it works, and the fact that it's a government-sponsored program originally, and all of that sort of stuff. And I'd always assumed it to be in fairly heavy use for this kind of work, and last week it just didn't show up. Anyway, and then I'm going to shorten the CVEs list. I had a sort of top 5, I think, last week, or most interesting from the top 10 of 5. Lots of them haven't changed. Lots of them are still CV indicators from 26 years ago that are still being absolutely hammered. Lots of it to do with print, lots of it to do with VoIP, lots of it to do with software-defined storage as well. But there's a sort of new one that's cropped up on the list, as in new to the list, not a new CVE, but it's relatively modern compared to the others. It's CV 2024 4577, which is argument injection in PHP CGI. So this is affecting people who've got Apache deployed with PHP CGI, which is obviously the Apache module for running PHP. Effectively, in the background, is more or less just running a PHP shell and forwarding commands.
Oh, okay.
It's actually kind of dumb in comparison to something like what you do with Nginx and use PHP FPM. It's quite a simple system. Obviously, there's guardrails and what have you put in, but realistically, it just goes, give me a PHP shell. I'm going to run some PHP now and then return some HTML to you. So yeah, it affects a whole bunch of versions in the 8 family. I won't list them all, but there are some in 8.1 and subsequent versions of 8.1, 8.2 and subsequent versions of 8.2, and 8.3 and subsequent versions of 8.3. It's got a really high criticality of 9.8, and a Metasploit module exists. So there are people in the wild definitely making the most of this situation. But weirdly, it only affects Windows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So apparently there are people out there running PHP and Apache on Windows servers. Who knew? It's not something that I would ever personally do, but it's an option. And I guess where there's an option, there will be people doing it.
Funnily enough, I tried it once many years ago, running PHP on Microsoft iOS web server, and it was a dog's dinner, so I wrote it off as a bad plan.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a classic stack to have a LAMP stack, for example, or whatever, that it never would occur to me just to be like, yeah, we can do this in Windows, no trouble. Which, of course, you can. It's just a computer, but it's not necessarily where I would go to first.
No, and funny enough, you said, it'll run on Windows, no trouble. Well, the actual fact is, it runs on Windows with trouble.
With some trouble,
yeah, with some trouble. So just don't bloody do it, people.
Yeah, bizarre. But I guess if you've got that server license, you're going to bloody use it.
Yeah, I mean, you paid for it, so yeah.
So yeah, basically what happens is that Windows can interpret command line characters as Win32 API calls.
Yeah.
So this can allow options from the PHP binary to leak into Windows via Win32 API system calls. Talos spotted this, and they spotted it in a campaign targeting Japanese orgs primarily back in March.
No.
But yeah, obviously the potential for somebody to just pass Win32 API calls through to your server from the web is pretty disastrous potentially.
It's astonishingly strong, that one.
So yeah, maybe just don't run PHP on Windows. That might be the solution there.
Yeah.
And probably avoid Apache as well. That's my personal prejudice creeping in there. I'm an Nginx fanboy, but there you go.
No, me too, in all fairness.
Yeah, so that's the CV that I sort of plucked out of the list today, which was relatively modern. So, I didn't want to keep banging on about the 26-year-old vulnerabilities that we were seeing being exploited, even though they are by far and away the most active ones that we're picking up indicators for. And then a little note on sort of how many pings we're seeing. This is average unique IPs per day. Last week was at roughly 4,000. This week is roughly 4,500. So we've actually seen an uptick in traffic. That seems to be relatively consistent over the week. We don't get massive spikes to do with time zones or anything like that, which I guess isn't surprising because the majority of this stuff is going to be being automated.
Yeah,
it's probably running 24 hours a day, so the traffic will be relatively consistent. But it does just kind of illustrate the scale of a single public IP on the internet, which is the gateway to these things. So these honeypots, of which there are, I think, about a dozen that we're running. 4,500 unique IPs. So that's not attacks or people trying things. That could be an IP running a whole suite of automated pinging off of that particular IP address, and it's just like, yeah, if you're hosting things on the internet, you're getting pinged.
Oh, totally. Yeah, even if you haven't got the logs to prove it, you just are.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, can you imagine how much faster the internet would be for everyone if all of this unnecessary traffic just stopped?
Do you know what? I had this exact thought. I was thinking about the kind of eco-credentials of this problem.
Yeah.
And because obviously everyone talking about AI and the eco problems of the amount of AI that we're running now, and it's only going to be getting worse. And I was thinking, I wonder how much sort of bad actor traffic makes up the carbon footprint of the internet, if you like. And I bet it's substantial.
Yeah, I bet it is.
You hear stats bandied around all the time, like 40% of all traffic, right? And it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case, if it was between a third and 0.4 of a 1.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that Bitcoin mining is disastrous for the planet. But actually, has anybody given any thought to the carbon footprint of malicious traffic out there on the internet? If anybody has done the maths on this, please do reach out and let us know. I'd love to know about it. In fact, we'd get you on for a special podcast or something.
Do a guest spot on something, because I think it's really, really interesting, actually. I mean, kind of an unsolvable problem, right? But it would be interesting to have someone else to point a finger at.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my little bit for this week. What we've seen first party, as I said last week, democratizing cybersecurity by sharing our observations, I guess. Yeah. What has surprised me, Rich, about this and running these teapots, these honeypots, is just that we've seen so much diversity in relatively short periods of time. I kind of expected to do the research for this week and come back and be like, it's all much the same as last week. Not true. Campaigns change. The scams that are being run seem to change frequently. Where they're coming from seems to change frequently, which kind of indicates the problem, right? The whole you are Wile E. Coyote, and you are chasing that bird all the time, because things just change really quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, keep everything patched all the time, and be sensible. Most of this is mitigatable with basic hygiene.
Yeah. Do not underestimate the importance of basic cyber hygiene out there.
No, absolutely.
There's a lot of things you can do with your existing tooling. You don't have to buy new tools necessarily. You know, you don't have to reach into your pocket or go to your finance department asking for more cash. You'll find that a lot of the stuff you've already got has got decent enough security built in. You've just got to switch it on and configure it.
Yeah.
And on that bombshell, no, that's a bit Jeremy Clarkson-esque, isn't it? On that note, thank you all for listening. Normal service will resume on Monday with Stephen Ridgway. And have a good day, everyone. Take care.